Greetings and welcome to the Destination Goa Trance podcast, where we are bringing in-depth interviews with artists, label people, organizers from the golden age of the 90s all the way to the modern era. My name is Simon Peter and I'm here with the one and only Tibus.
Nice. Let's talk about Goa trance. Peter, have you ever experienced a total eclipse?
Yes, two times in fact, and the first was Hungary when I was a kid in 1999. And later on at a Psytrance festival in Turkey in 2006. It was quite a journey to get there, actually. It was a great adventure going through all the Balkans in a coach. It took us almost 2 days to get there, actually. But it was, in the end, a very memorable experience. It was an awesome festival indeed. Eclipse happened right in the middle of the whole festival, basically.
Do you remember who played when eclipse happened?
Yes, it was Hallucinogen on the main stage right before the eclipse. And there was a pause, there was quiet when the eclipse actually was at its peak. So there was a few minutes of silence. And Simon went over to the chill out stage and played as Spongel, but played only a DJ set with some of the younger brother tracks that were still unreleased at the time. It was quite a show. A lot of people were packed at a small, nice little chill out area.
Wow, that's something. I mean, Hallucinogen, then Total Eclipse, and then Spongel. I wish I would be there. I saw the 99 Total Eclipse myself, although I don't remember that much. I was a kid back then, and yeah, well, it was too short. But our guest today, Stephane from Total Eclipse, he also experienced the 99 Total Eclipse at the Solips Festival. Steph had a very interesting musical journey that led to the formation of Total Eclipse. He already played with the prominent figures of the Goa scene a decade before Goa was even a thing. He formed Total Eclipse with two French gentlemen, Loic and Serge, and they already had a track on the very first Goa Trance compilation, Project to Trance, which was released by Dragonfly in '93. They had one of the very first artist album, Delta Aquarids, which was released in '95, and a year later they released another classic called Violent Relaxation, which was a double album, and the second disc was a downtempo record, pretty unique at that time, but I guess it's still a unique thing to release a double album. The third album was interestingly a drum and bass record. After a while, Total Eclipse became Stephane's solo project. Nowadays he's doing it together with Mario Stribitsas. Peter, what are your personal memories of Steph's music?
I remember listening to Delta Aquarids back in the day when I was just discovering Goa Trance. It was one of the first albums that I've heard. I was also very surprised when I heard Access Denied shortly after, because it was totally different. The sound itself wasn't new. I was more into drum and bass back then, so I've heard similar albums before, but I think at that point I hadn't heard an electronic artist releasing music in such distinctly different styles under the same name.
My first encounter with Total Eclipse was the first Order Ononata compilation. They had two tracks on that, Aliens and Sound is Solid, which I listened to a lot. I loved that compilation. This is going to be the first part of our interview with Steph, where we discuss Steph's early career, which led to the formation of Total Eclipse, and we are also discussing the Total Eclipse story until the release of Delta Aquarids. Hey Steph, welcome to our show. You were originally a bass player, right? So how did you start playing music?
I started playing music when I was a little kid. I was always been into music, composing music and writing music. I played many instruments, like young kids, even like doing like concrete music, throwing marbles in the bath and recording it on mini cassettes and making rings on glasses and mixing all those sounds together. And then I started to play guitar when I was about, 8, 9 years old. And then I started having a kind of folk band with a friend, like guitars, acoustic guitars and vocals, like harmony singing and things like that. It was about 11, and already going on stage actually to perform that. We had a lot of courage. Then we did that maybe till I was about 13 or something like that. Then I started to play the bass because we needed a bass player in the band we were forming. And my two friends were a better guitar player than I, so I thought, oh, I'm going to take the bass. It's more simple, 4 strings. Yeah, I liked it very much. That went on quite crazily, that band. We started to move slowly from rock to jazz and kind of jazz rock. We're really into being instrumentist and, working our instrument like crazy as soon as we had a minute. That band went on till I was, I don't know, 17, 18, and started playing a lot of project rock bands again, and la 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 la. And then in 77, I joined a group with an Hungarian guy, actually, Peter. Played music with him, OG, his name was. And then I fucked off with him in England. And then in England, we were supposed to have a lot of studio and blah, 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 and blah, 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 but nothing happened. But I was enjoying it, and I've been like 81 or something like that. Very fast, I was looking for bands to play because I was bored. Then I met Youth, and we started this rock band, Brilliant, which was like a bit of a story about it. Many people went through that band. It's incredible. We all end up being trance artists, all of us. Youth, we did the Butterfly Studios and all these things, and Ben Watkins was in it as well, and Jimmy Coty from KLF was in it as well. I don't know who else was there, but we all end up, played that band's first gig was at the Batcave Club, and the Batcave Club was Ollie's Wisdom's Club, when we were all like fucking gothic at the time. But that gang is really, 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 really made a lot of things in all that electronic music. And already with that band, we were playing around with computers, and not computers, synthesizers. When we were in studio, we were always having a Prophet 5 and, whatever synth was around the studio. We might use it for pads and atmospheric sounds and things like that. Even before that, actually, I had an MS-20 at home in France. So I was already very much into synths, that's for sure. Slowly, about, 89 or something like that, I just had enough of playing the bass and being a bass player and doing session and playing with rock groups, and it was a bit tiring, really. Yeah, I got into electronic music, and that was really easy to get into it. It was fun. It was pure fun. Could do anything with the samplers. Was like the main reason actually to start. Even before that, at home, I had one of them ZX84 Spectrum computers. Don't know if you ever heard of them. They were funny little machines. I had an interface plugged to it, and I had 1 second sampling time. And that was in about 84, 85. So I was really fucking about with it, and already writing MIDI things. It was no electronic music. It was just like, and driving this and the drum machine and fucking up with it. And so 1980, 1990, 1991, as I knew Ben very well, I told him, look, there's that kind of music. I'm really into it. Fancy doing a track together. I wrote the track and it's ready, and let's get in the studio and do it. And then he got into it, and that was the Electrotet project was born, before Juno Reactor, before Total Eclipse. We released a few tracks. Strangely enough, it became Juno Reactor slowly, and I went on to do Total Eclipse, just being with French guys a bit, for a bit of French communication that was missing. So I had enough of England, and was staying too long living in England, about 10 years was enough for me. So came back to France, but was still some Juno Reactor and Total Eclipse in the same time. And that was quite fun, but slowly, I was not going to London that much more. And I thought to Ben, I just keep on. He wanted to make it as a partnership with many people all the time. So I said, oh, well, enjoy. Then I went back with him to work, many different albums, a track here, a track there. Then on the Matrix, I went to work a bit with him, for quite a long bit with him actually. And then he made his way, and I made my way as Total Eclipse and Digital Mystery Tour and many other side projects with friends. Even like electronic death metal band I have. It's scary, I tell you. It's fun. That's it.
Yeah.
Now the influence in music. As you heard, I like rock and roll, I like folk, I like jazz, I love classical music. And main influence, let's say, on the classical side, I would say all the moderns like Prokofiev, Stravinsky, very Russian style, and all the French guys as well from that time, this area of time, like, beginning of the century music. Love it. Till the first half. After that, I lost track a bit. On the jazz side, I'm a fucking super fan of John Coltrane, Miles Davis. And I was playing jazz rock with guys, so I love Weather Report. Many bands in that area, Mahavishnu Orchestra, and so on. On the electronic side, I liked Kraftwerk very much, but very much influenced by Yellow at the beginning of it as well. But not influenced, but I was listening to it thinking, oh, wow, they sound great. They know how to use their samplers. The programming went on. Then, we were working with Cubase 1.0 on the Atari until it grew up. But before that, using MC500, which is like sequencers, basically. The first ever track was made on sequencers. There was no computer, the Electrotet one. Even the beginning of Juno, of both actually, Juno Reactor and Total Eclipse was made on MC500 sequencers. Then the Atari turned up and we jumped on it. You can imagine, it was a revolution. Shamefully enough, we stopped, and I still regret having stopped actually the sequencers. But never mind, all that fashion's back with the modulars and all this and all that, which I don't have, but I wish I had. So what else big influence in music there is? I don't know, so much.
Did you also listen to psychedelic music?
Of course. Love Hendrix, love Jefferson Airplane, Grateful Dead. I was listening to this when I was like a young hippie boy, from 13 to all this. When I was not playing with my friends, crazy music, I was hanging around with like friends of my brothers who were a real bunch of hippies. And I was listening to a lot of psychedelic music, but not a lot like gong and all this and all that, like more American style psychedelics.
You obviously had some punk influences as well, I guess, because you mentioned Peter Hegedűs is Hungarian. He's one of the originators of the punk scene in Hungary. He fled France from the Soviet Hungary.
He ran away. He ran away with his mate, and they arrived in France. I know the whole story inside out.
How did you guys meet up in France?
He started to make this band, OGI, and he called my friend drummer, Clément. He needed a bass player for a track in the studio. Clément said, hey, why don't you turn up to play the bass? I knew him, actually, because I was visiting him with Clément many times at his house, fucking about with his synths, because he had a lot of synths, because his project was mainly synths. There was synths, drums, bass at first on the first album. Then after that, we started to decide to play live. So we joined in quite a guitar player and a trombone player, a woman trombone player. Well, we hung around together about a year and a half, 2 years. Then we went to London, and in London, suddenly he disappeared. Didn't see him anymore. So I went my way.
I listened to that record. It's quite avant-garde or experimental in terms of style.
Yes, very much. Well, he's a composer, He's a kind of guy who you say, okay, can you write Stravinsky style? And he take a paper and a pen and goes, it's one of them. He was like first prize in composition, in piano, in this, in that. What's it called? In the Conservatory of Music in Budapest when he was a kid. So, that kind of genius.
Yeah, and once you went to England, you met another mover in the punk scene who was Youth, who was also quite
Yeah,
influential
yeah.
in
It was
there.
more. It was more somehow not really punk anymore. It was more like goth, or I mean, it was affiliated to goth because we were playing like the Bat Caves and things like that. Can't say we were that much dressed in black, even though. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It was a bit of a change, that's for sure. It was very much of a change for me, kind of music, and it was fun. Also, it was fun because we had this band with two bass guitars. Youth's a bass player, and I'm a bass player.
Brilliant had some charting success. I think they had cover song of a James Brown track or something like that,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah, it's a man's world. Yeah, I
Yeah,
left
but
the band by that time. When it became a pop band, I was fucking out of it. Got the sack by Warner Brothers and quite a bit of money to leave the band, so I took the money and run.
yeah, well, the video clip for that track
Yeah,
with
yeah,
Youth and Jimmy Cauty, that's a
yeah. Jimmy
nice.
and June, who was the singer at the end of the band. Yeah, yeah, the three of them. It's a man world.
Yeah, but I guess that helped Youth to set up his own studio and
Well, you've always been
maybe.
a clever boy, It's like I don't know when he set up his studio. Actually, yeah, yeah. After that, well, after that, like the band Brilliant was in debt so much because they recorded album after albums, and I don't know, they never break it. So you've always been very clever with the world of music, and I don't know how he decided to open his studio, but he did, and it was really great help, that Butterfly Studio at the beginning of Trance, because it was one of the proper studio where you could just go and play, and the label was really helping out as well. It was brilliant. Thanks, you.
Thanks indeed. Um, Electrotet was, I read somewhere that it was started because you were influenced by some parties that you went to.
Well, yeah, 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 but you have to start discovering that kind of music. It is such a different style, but it was like in between, like parties in England and parties in France. And yeah, yeah, friend of mine, Yayo, who had the TBE party organization, was one of the first party organization in France and one of the first trance DJs ever, actually. Even gave his first trance track to Ollie Wisdoms, and so he was making parties. I went one time and I went back home and I said, okay, I've got a couple of synths, I've got a drum machine. Let's do it. And then I wrote those two tracks that we recorded with pen.
Well, Electrotet is not Goa trance as it was later.
Yeah, Go Trance didn't exist. So
Yeah,
don't
yeah,
think like that.
but I think in those two tracks you can already hear the trippy soundscapes and the tribal feel.
They were made. They were made actually to go to Goa. They were made just to be sending to Goa to friends and who were DJing and playing, and in the idea of play those tracks for parties.
Yeah, I think you've also made a remix called Anjuna Dawn or
Yeah,
something like that,
yeah,
one
yeah.
of the Electrotet.
Yeah, there's been yeah, there was a version with vocals, and
But it was originally an Electrotet track, right?
I'm afraid so.
You heard of the parties but haven't visited that?
So I was going to parties in France.
Hmm.
My friends were making crazy, fucking super good parties, really, from 91 or something like that.
But you heard about the scene in Goa through other travelers.
Yeah, but I was not going to Goa because I was already working with Ben, and I was at that time already living back in Paris. So I had to go in England all the time, and we were working quite a lot because we were like discovering that kind of music and writing and spending a lot of time in the studio to set up, to get a sound together. So holiday in India was not for me much at that time. Sorry.
So your music traveled to Goa through DJs
Yeah,
and then it
yeah,
started to influence the culture there. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Those first tracks, and the first tracks were very fast because it went really fast to get Electrotet, then Juno tracks, then Total Eclipse tracks. Quite fast, all those things happening together in the same moment. So basically, I was all the time in the studio till I think first time I went in Goa was in '97, and I went there hiding myself, not wanting to play any parties or whatever, just wanting to enjoy being in India.
Did you ever play live with Electrotat?
No, Electrotet only did 3 tracks, I think, or 4 maybe. It became Juno and Total Eclipse very fast, and the project was abandoned.
You worked on the first Juno Reactor album, Transmission. I think you wrote 5 tracks.
Yeah,
There's
yeah, 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 yeah.
one of the bangers, I think, Laughing Gas.
Still, I love it, actually. Still, I love it. I think Ben re-released all those tracks again.
Yeah, he just released it on vinyl, I think, last year or something like
Yes,
that. So,
yes.
what do you remember of working on Transmission?
I remember a really long session, taking all day and night, and hardly sleeping, and spending life in the studio under the diktat of Ben. He's a very nice guy, but he's not the most easy to work with sometimes. But we were having a really good time. I mean, he was just brilliant.
Or was it because you had a lot of ideas you wanted to experiment with, or was it because of the technology wasn't there yet and it was hard to set up the instruments and the synths to keep them in sync?
No, no, no. It was really easy to set up the instruments, man. MIDI was okay. All the MIDI chaining and all this and all that. It's just like you do it twice, and when you know what's an in and what's an out, you just understand it very fast. No, no, we were surrounded with equipment, many synths, and programming all the time, and looking for sounds, and spending a lot of time in the studio, really a lot of time in the studio to make that album.
Which one is your favorite track that you worked on?
Yes, man, I don't know. Maybe Laughing Gas. I don't even remember all the track there is in there, but yeah, probably Laughing Gas.
Was there anything particularly difficult to solve in the studio, or was there something you spent a lot of time on figuring out how to do or how it should sound best?
Well, it seems like Ben was doing most of the sound engineering, except when it was mixing, because we needed our 4 hands on the mixer, because it's like a big mixer, and you have a lot of auxiliaries, and you don't play with the EQs. EQs are made and things like that, but sometimes you have some fades and groups, and so you need to manipulate and doing some knob twiddling, which is fun. I don't think we had difficulties, no? I don't remember it. Things. You remember the good moments,
Yeah. And what was there a time when you all of you were in the studio? I think Mike Maguire was also working with Ben at the time.
Quite often in the studio, but it was not actually programming music or writing music. It was just more playing tracks, vibing up, being part of the gang, basically. Yeah, playing us what he was, the tracks he liked. Basically, he was the band DJ.
And he was basically responsible for spreading the sound in the Goa parties later on, right?
Well, yeah, because he had access to all those nice tracks.
Yeah.
And very fast, he had all the Total Eclipse and all the Juno Reactor. There was nearly enough to play a party at the time, because there was not that many things. And when Butterfly happened, and we were also very close, the one from the other, we all knew each other, like all the tip lot is the same. We were all friends, going to party together. And
How were the parties back then before? So in the 90s that you visited in 91, 92, if you compare it to nowadays, what are the differences and what do you remember of those parties?
well, those parties, the psychedelic ones, there was, I don't know, maybe the one in Paris was like 400, 500 people. Somehow very fast. Everybody knew each other. DJs were playing a lot longer than nowadays. So you were having a whole night with 3 DJs. It was not like you play an hour and a half and you fuck off. You play 3-4 hours, then someone takes over. So you really have time to make your story when you're playing. Yeah, everybody. It was great. Those parties. You had the dancers that you made sure that you could have the good dancers in the parties, because good dancers had the power to get the whole floor to really act and things like that. And I don't know, maybe people were more close to each other at that time.
Yeah, it's very interesting that you also mentioned Mike and some other DJs had access to great music that you were doing in the studio, and you didn't go to Goa, but then some people traveled, DJ'd in Goa, and they had the scene developing there. The style got its name from Goa, but
I don't know where it's from or why it happened to be called Goa music, but that was the idea because we were making tracks to be sent to Goa. Then after that became a bit too much about it, and I remember like Ben was really pissed off, saying like, "It's too much, all that Indian gods all over and blah blah blah. Fuck this." But at first it was super exciting. I mean, it was a movement with a kind of philosophy, artists, graphic artists, writers, all really like little world of itself that was making it, really interesting. Which missed after that. That's when the scene start go down. Is when you don't have such a collaboration with all kind of art mixed up. Now what you have deco team and music, and that's about it. There is not, apart from the decoration in a party, there you don't have like artists making artwork just for that scene, or there's not that philosophy anymore. And but I mean, it's obvious like the drugs had changed, and that was a big part of why the scene was like that as well.
Unfortunately.
It's really funny because the drug was into the music. You don't need to take drugs when you have music like that. When you're a musician, it's more easy. And when you have, because I had training of all those psychedelic when I was a lot younger, so didn't need it to fucking have to have a try. I tried it before when it was the real stuff.
I did not mean drugs, how the whole Goa trance movement changed and became completely different.
It's sad. It's sad. The way it changed, it's in a bad way. That's the way it is.
So, how did you meet Serge and how did you form Total Eclipse?
I met Serge when I was one of those parties of my friend. He was a young DJ. He was playing, and I thought he was great. And I said, do you fancy making music together? He said, yeah, why not? I don't mind trying. But I never played in a band, he said. I said, no worries. I will show you how to do it. Then we started working, making music. Then Loïc got into it, who was also going to the same parties, the TBE parties in Paris. So we got the three of us, and we went to a family house in the countryside. And we took all the equipment we could have, all the money we could have to buy gear. And we went to try to get a sound together. And it took a good year, really, of every day working, making music, every day. I always tracks that were totally unfinished. They were like studies, basically. And then we all moved to Bordeaux, where Serge had a house. And we set up the studio there, which was getting more and more of a serious studio. We had recorded the first album. And then we did the Violent Relaxation in Bordeaux. But before that, the first album we did at Dragonfly Studio, which was great for Serge and Loïc to be in London, in the studio. They'd never been there. So they really enjoyed, and we worked solid for... And I think it took us about a month. I mean, we had composed all the track before, but they were demos, and we reprogrammed everything in the studio. That was it. Started up being first ever track. It was just Serge and I. We went to Dragonfly, and we did a single in the night. Like 2 tracks, one called Black Hole, and the other one I don't remember.
And, I think it was Total Eclipse. No?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, maybe. Yeah, that's it. But I don't even remember that track, to tell you the truth.
But that's the name of the band. How did you come up with the name?
Yeah, but that's the way it happened. Because we were doing this recording. At the end of the recording, said, "Oh, okay," said the guy who was engineering with us. So he said, "I've got to write the name of the band on the thing." And I said, what about Total Eclipse? And that was it. So that's a good idea. So I think I remembered this album from Billy Cobham, a jazz drummer. And he had an album called Total Eclipse. And I thought, that's a good name. Then suddenly it came back saying, yeah, why not a band called Total Eclipse? Hurry up. Yeah, Total Eclipse. As the track was saying, for whatever reason, we used that sample of this engineer, actually. Say the Total Eclipse in the middle. But I don't remember nothing of the track. Maybe I should try to find it somewhere. Probably exists.
Later, you actually, I think, experienced more than once the Total Eclipse while playing with Total Eclipse.
Yeah, yeah. That was the first one. Was in Hungary, I mean, yeah, on the Ozora side. That was a bit of a fucking amazing time, actually. I really enjoyed that one.
Yeah, and I remember seeing you in Turkey in 2006, actually. There was another full Total Eclipse.
That's true. There wasn't there one in Tanzania as well? Was it an eclipse there or not?
Yeah, I think there was an Eclipse festival there as well. So
Yeah. That's about it. I think it's the three eclipses I saw. After this, all the other eclipses, there's festival, but they don't invite me.
I would have thought that with this name, they would invite you more often.
Yeah, but I think whether they don't know it or whether they don't like the music, I don't know. It's promoters, they don't.
Yeah,
Many promoters, they don't even listen to the music anymore.
but at least you spent some time at one of these legendary festivals, like the first Eclipse.
I got like a bunch like this of passes from festivals. It's like if I hold them all. I did a picture one time, then I throw them all out. But I had about 9 of them in Ozora or something like fucking something stupid and few booms and few this and few that. Yeah, I did all those festivals many times. They're fucking brilliant. They still are great. I mean, I was playing in Ozora 2 years ago. I really enjoyed it. I think it was fun.
Yeah, compared to like the original Solips, which was almost the same festival site, it's was nearby.
Yeah, it's the same site, but you can't compare because already since it's called Ozora, it has changed. So the first ever one was a different idea, different team. So every time, I don't play that often anyway in those festivals, which I think is good because I hate the idea of a festival when you have the same name every other year, or every year is the same fucking lineup. Who wants to go?
Apparently, all of these festivals are always sold out, so it looks like there is demand for it.
Yeah, sure. But personally, I prefer to appear from time to time, and at least people remember it.
Total Eclipse was definitely Goa trance from the beginning. I mean, to what we call Goa trance nowadays, and you had a distinct sound from the beginning.
That's the
I
idea.
think
That's why we worked so much on it. Because it's like rock band. A rock band has to develop his own sound. And it was the same for trance. Every band has their own sound. I mean, if you check out like a Tip, they had their own sound. Simon Pottsford had his own sound. The Ethnicalot, their own sound. The Total Eclipse, their own sound. The Juno, their own sound. Where all those guys, Tsuyoshi had his own sound with all this project. And the Green Nuns as well. I mean, everybody had made, because we all come from rock bands. So we had that rock mentality of develop your sound, then make your things, but you have to be different from everyone else. You have to have your own personality in your music. So you develop your harmonic system and you develop what kind of sounds you're going to be treating and what kind of format you want. Like Total Eclipse always been a bit of a combo. Not that many instruments, bass and leads, pads and drums, and that was about it. Even the bass, if you compare with trance of nowadays, bass don't exist.
Yeah, and it's very interesting that during the same era, many people used same instruments or similar synthesizers like SH-101, the Juno 106. They were very popular amongst trance artists, but still everybody came up with different sounds, different patches, or an overall different sound. So there was really a lot of emphasis.
So no preset, you have to make your sounds. How come you're gonna do the same sound that the other guy and just make it? Yeah, this one I like it. And as the track goes along, you have to filter it manually because there was no way to control a 101 After this, we had them middied up, but the filter never been middied up. So you had your 211 going up, a bit of release, a bit of this, a bit of that, a bit of resonance, a bit of.
But this was also a conscious decision, so that you always keep some unpredictability, some element in it that want to control manually.
It was not in purpose. It just happened to be like that. Because you were making your sound and making your music and not trying to copy nobody was the point.
But of course, in the beginning, there was nobody to copy. I mean, to me, it's striking. You can recognize Total Eclipse in the Total Eclipse track. And of course, you can recognize it 10 years later still. Because it's the harmonies, the arrangement of the melodies is...
Still nowadays, the track I'm doing, you can hear it's the Total Eclipse track, I reckon. I don't know if you heard some of the latest ones.
Yeah.
But there is always that factor. Even though the future art is far more like the original version of Total Eclipse, I reckon. Or, let's see, I'm into, and with Marius, into not making retro music, but reusing what's good in retro music to make retro sound. I don't know. The influence of being more open again, fucking not get limited by any kind of format or whatever. Fucking just go for it and go wild.
And why did you create this trippy trance music from the start? There were a lot of electronic music styles back then. There still are, techno, big beat, whatever. What was the appeal in this sound?
I don't know what it does to your mind. What it does to your mind when you're dancing and things like that, getting elevated, and no more complicated than that.
So your approach to writing music is more of a focus on the melodies and trying to create a structure, right?
It's very much melodic. I mean, I like to be melodic. I write classical music at the moment, quite a bit for my fun. I call them essays, studies. I would never release it, or it's not no way it's commercial at all or whatever. It's just melodies and point, counterpoint, harmonies and rhythm, and quite a bit of awareness, but very much in that vibe, in that modern vibe. After that, I did try to orchestrate some of Total Eclipse music for my pleasure. I did Nautilus, orchestral vision of Nautilus. Well, I keep it for me.
I think it would be interesting to hear it.
No, I don't have the right sound. I don't have the fucking equipment to make it sound like a proper orchestra. I would never write the scores, and probably no orchestra would be interested to play it for me. So I would be unable to direct it neither.
So when you were writing tracks together, did you also divide like roles within the band, that somebody would come up with a bass idea, somebody would come up with patches for another synth, or how was the writing process with the band?
There was no writing process. It was just like yeah, I got an idea. Pass me the controllers now. And yeah, that's good, but that note I don't like. Okay, here you go. They take it over. And it was that was really good. That was really good. Like it makes really nucleus and things like that, which was really, really happening for Total Eclipse. That kind of vision of and way of working.
If I check the liner notes, you guys wrote some tracks together. Some tracks were written by two of you, and some tracks were even written by only Serge or by you.
Yeah.
How did you decide which track ends up on a compilation or on the album?
Well, I don't know. I was just putting all the tracks, playing them all together and saying, this one goes with that. Just discussing it, listening to it, trying to put them up together as an album. Some of us, I was already at the beginning, till like the first two albums of Total Eclipse. I was working with Ben as well quite a lot. So I was not always there. So I couldn't be on every tracks. Yeah, no, all albums were made like together. We were just taking all the tracks we made lately, listening to it all, reject a few, putting what's good together. Even when we did that strange album, the more jazzy one, made everybody scared at the time, but now they all like it. It's really funny.
When did you start gigging with Total Eclipse? Did you already release Delta Accords, or it was before that?
I think it was before that. Yeah, because I found some live gig from '94. I checked out the lineup, and there's hardly any tracks that happen to be in the album. So yeah, we were doing a few gigs. We did one in Bordeaux, one in Paris, one in Denmark, but maybe there was already a few tracks out at the time. I don't remember exactly the way it went on, chaining itself, but I think, yeah, we were gigging before releasing the album.
Regarding the first album, let's talk a little bit about that. Where does the title come from and what does it mean?
Well, Delta Aquarids is, around the 15th of August, you have all those étoiles filantes, like shooting stars.
Uh-huh.
That you can see so many of them. This is the Delta Aquarids. It's all the shooting stars that you can see mid-August. It's what it's called.
And why did you choose this title?
Sounds good. And it's a nice picture. And it fits the idea of Total Eclipse, because it's like in the universe somewhere, like some event happening that you can enjoy, and it's fabulous. Yeah, it's links. Probably it was Loic who found the title for that one.
What do you think of your debut album as Total Eclipse?
I really like it. I'm doing so many of those retro gigs, and more and more I'm asking to do 3 hours. If I can, I do 4 hours. I can go through so many kind of variation only in retro, in between like 90s and let's say 2002 maximum. It's really nice album. Really nice album. I mean, so many tracks I love in it. Crucible, I love it. Blade Runner, I love it. Can't Do That. It's one of my favorite ever. I wasn't there. It's Loic and Serge drinking a bottle of Jack Daniel one night in the studio. I'm getting so pissed. That's what it came out to. Like, that sounds great. I wish I'd been there.
Yeah, it's interesting because some people were already trying to write concept albums in Goa trance, like having kind of a vision for the whole album and have it as a journey. But as I understand, your process was like trying to write the best tracks you can, trying to select and then put together the best tunes you had at the time. And it really is a compilation of great tunes like Free Lemonade, Can't Do That.
Also, we didn't have a format in tracks. All our tracks were so different, the one from the other ones. They had this common aspect of them, linked by the kind of production, the sounds we used, our harmonic system, basically, and the melodic system as well, which is quite weird when you know music a bit, like, because it's so much like things that you shouldn't do, but we do them. Fuck that. Yeah, concept album. After this, if you take like the second one, is more concepted, just because of the title of 2 albums, one for dancing and one for relaxing. So it's the violence and the relaxation. So there we go more into the concept kind of idea. But this happened once we did all those tracks. We were doing we were doing banging tracks. Then when we finished the banging tracks, we wanted to do another track, but not again another banging track. So we were taking the tempo down and doing another track.
I just want to seize the opportunity to have a couple of questions about Delta Aquarids tracks, because that's one of my favorite albums.
Right.
And I just wondering a couple of facts. There's a sample in The Age of Reason that I've been on drugs for 20 years. Where does that sample come from?
I don't know, actually. Loic was mainly finding samples on internet, which hardly there was any internet and things like that at the time, or on some radio show or whatever. I mean, that was his main participation. Most of the time, he was hanging around, searching for voice and things like this. And really, I've been on drug for 20 years. I don't remember at all where it's from.
Yeah, I've heard it for 100 or 1,000 times, and I always wonder, where does this come from?
It's funny. I remade a version of that, because the original version of it is there's a 20-minute mix of it or something like that, of that track. I used a part of the album one, and the original mix, which was not even mastered and all. So I had to ask a friend of mine who does mastering, who's a bit of a nerd, and to try to master and try to make it sound like the same mastering than the other track, which was the other track was like not made with the same synth, not made with the same, but he did it, and I made like I don't know 12 or 13 minutes version of it for my own use. Actually, we played it in at the Dome in the Ozora this year. If you heard that show, maybe you find it on Ozora Radio. We were the first gig on, and I think they didn't record it well at all. I think there's one of the channel not working well or something. But that's what I've heard. I didn't go to listen to it. But yeah, I've got that somewhere. I don't even know what I did with it. So I lost the program I made for that gig. Strangely enough, it got erased.
And then my next track is Bad Data, which contains, I think, an Indian sample at the beginning, or Indian instrumentation, right?
Yes.
Which, of course, later became a corny thing in psytrance to use Indian stuff. But back at that time, it was really original. And how did you guys have the idea to use that, to have that?
I don't think it's. I think it's written. If my memory is good, let me. Yeah, I know another one. I'm gonna tell you immediately. I'm loading it up there. I'm gonna listen to it a little bit of the intro of it. Yeah, that's the drone is an Indian one, and the flute is played on the synth. Well, I don't know. It just sounded nice to do. I think it was part originally of another track that I've started and using this in it, and we thought, oh yeah, why don't we do a track for the album using that bit of that? I don't remember the name it was at the time. It was a track I started alone and shifted into the album and started with this. It was very inspiring to keep on with it.
I want some inside information. It's Free Lemonade, which is one of my absolute favorite tracks. And
Right.
I actually experienced I was in Belgium for a retro party of yours. Actually, Juno Reactor, Man with No Name played also on that party. It was in Antwerp like 8-9 years ago. It was a retro party.
Sorry, I forgot.
Anyway,
was it outside or inside?
No, it was indoor. It was indoor. It was, I think, in November or.
And Juno was playing retro at the time.
Yeah, and Blue Planet Corporation and Man with No Name. This was the lineup.
Really?
Anyhow, let me put it this way. I did accept some free lemonade from someone, and you played this track, and it was just amazing experience.
Yeah, well, you're lucky then. Because the poor guy, you know who says that sample? It's Batman. It's a Batman sample from the original series.
I would never guess that.
Have you seen those in I think it must be in the Total Eclipse side. You have two little videos of this. There's a Total Eclipse track called Batman. And we did two little videos with it, with Batman synchro and dancing. And it's like the follow-up to Free Lemonade, because the girl puts something in his drink. He becomes like, and he gets, the poor guy gets kidnapped by a pharaoh, and they take the piss out of him very badly. It's a nice track, that. It's a crazy track. Yeah, I like it. I like the crazy side of it, kind of guitar solo style. And I've always liked them, those manic bits.
So was that part actually a programmed synth, and you had the guitar distortion on it, or how was that?
Yeah, it's out of a synth. It's out of a synth. And try to make it sound like an electric guitar as much as possible, with all the feeling of it. Quite a few of the kind of solos I like to do. Like Espagnolizar is another one. A bit similar, really bluesy actually, with lots of long pulled notes.
Yeah, I always wondered actually if it was played on a synth or was
it's
it
played and
guitar.
programmed, man. It's all programmed, note per note, velocity per velocity, and this and that. I wished I was able to play guitar like this. If I was a great guitar player, I would play like that. Well, I don't know if it's great or not, but if I was a good guitar player, that's the way I would like to play.
Delta Aquarids was recorded in Butterfly Studios or in France?
Yeah, Butterfly Studios.
Tell me a little bit about Butterfly Studios back in the 90s. What should we imagine? We see all
You
these
can imagine.
incredible albums.
You can imagine there's three studios in the same house. One is a big studio downstairs, and there's two other studios upstairs. And we were in the studio upstairs, which is the medium studios out the lot. We stayed in the studio, which was one room basically, not even acoustic made in that one. It's just like a computer and a lot of synths and a good pair of speakers. We went in there and stayed 1 month, and we were sleeping in the studio, the three of us. I tell you, I had to open the window in the morning, wide open. But we were actually sleeping in the studio, working whenever we felt working. We were, and the sound guy was coming in normal work hours. Then after that, we were going on and fucking up with the machine, having a good time with whoever was recording at the time. I think at the time Simon Putsford was working on the first floor on the downstairs studio. He was sound engineer for youth, engineering lots of kind of sessions and things like that. I think we did at the end of those stations. We did record a big part of the Yeti album at the end of that time in Butterfly Studio, but downstairs this time in the best place.
I wanted to ask about that collaboration as well.
I have my memories, but it seems like Rajaram has other memories of it, and probably Loic has a lot of other memories of it. It just happened. We just decided to do it. Called each other, and Simon was already there in the studio, so he was down there. We were here because we were working on our album. Raj was coming to Butterfly Studios.
And did you write the songs together, or did you jam basically, or how did that happen?
No, there's a lot of research for all the first parts.
You also used different name for a couple of tracks, The Antidote,
Yes.
and also you had Typhoon, and I want to understand what was the difference between these.
This takes us back to the world of parties, because with Yayo and those first original TBE parties, and where I met Serge and things like that, our friend Dan started DJing, and he was really our friend, and he was a good DJ, so we invited him to make track with us. That is Typhoon tracks, because Dan is like Hanbun Nihonjin, half Japanese. We decided to call it Typhoon altogether. Typhoon, I think there's maybe 2 tracks or 3 tracks. And Antidote is 2 or 3 tracks as well. Then after that, when Serge left Total Eclipse, he made another band called The Antidote, which is his project once he was in Ibiza. Then he stopped it all up after that.
But if I listen to the Antidote tracks, there is not much difference to Total Eclipse.
It's the same guys in the same studio, so.
Was it because you were releasing under a different label?
No. And also, Total Eclipse never had a contract to record only for this label or whatever. We were doing an album with Blue Room, but in the same time releasing track with Ted and whoever, and Dragonfly. Basically, that was our main 3.
Did you constantly write tracks, and when you have a bunch of them, then you release an album, or you had a plan with what tracks you want to release on the album?
No, we were doing a lot of tracks. We wanted to release album, but the same with Juno, and then choose them. I don't know what was an album. It was like 9 tracks, maybe 10 maximum. And we had to choose in about 16 to 20 tracks. And some of them were just thrown out, literally thrown out. The data and the sounds and this and this. And in the end, I regret, because some of them were quite good, but we sort of fucked them up. They all had one thing that we didn't like the way they were. And, to redo a mix at the time was you had to reset up everything. It was a nightmare. I mean, you couldn't really go back and redo it too much. You have to remake all the synth sound and the desk, and nothing was automized. Everything was manual, so it was a bit difficult.
Did you enjoy working like that more than now, when everything can be recalled and automatized?
I don't mind, because when it's not automatized and you're working on it, you had 2 solutions. Whether you were taking tape all across the mixer, nobody touch it, and do the same on the synth, And when we were working in our studio, anyway, we were all of us, the three of us, knew we were in a track, so nobody was touching sounds or fucking up with the mixer, or you know. But when you're in an outside studio, it can be trouble.
Stay tuned for part 2 of this interview in the next episode.
Thanks for listening, people. If you enjoyed the podcast, hit the like button and be sure to subscribe for more. If you have any ideas, questions, leave a comment or message us on Facebook or Instagram.